moments in a marriage when you see everything clearly for the first time. Not the big blowout fights. Not the obvious betrayals. Just a single sentence, spoken casually in a crowded room, that changes everything. For me, it happened on a Wednesday night at an Italian restaurant in Naperville, Illinois. I was standing next to my husband of 7 years, surrounded by his family and friends. The smell of garlic bread filled the air. Someone was laughing too loud about something. David's 52nd birthday dinner was winding down, and everyone was in that good mood you get when the food was decent and the wine kept flowing. His sister Lisa pulled out her phone. "Okay, birthday photo time," she announced. Everyone started gathering around David. I moved in closer, still holding my wine glass, already smiling for the camera. My hand rested on his arm the way it always did. Natural. Comfortable. 7 years of marriage makes these things automatic. That's when he said it. 5 words that made my entire world tilt sideways. I stood there frozen, not sure I'd heard him correctly. The restaurant was noisy. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe he was joking. But when I looked at his face, waiting for him to realize what he just said, waiting for him to correct himself, he didn't even glance at me. He was already repositioning himself. Already reaching for someone else. My wedding ring suddenly felt too tight on my finger. And in that moment, standing in the middle of that crowded restaurant with everyone watching, I understood something I'd been refusing to see for a very long time. I was standing inside my own marriage. But I wasn't considered family. Let me tell you how I got there. And more importantly, what I did next. David's ex-wife Christine was there that night. His daughter Ashley, 16 and awkward, stood nearby staring at her shoes. Lisa was trying to squeeze everyone into frame for the photo. "Hey, can you step out for a second?" David said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just family." I blinked. For half a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard him. I was already angled toward the camera, already smiling. But I hadn't misheard anything. "Oh," I said. I don't even remember meaning to speak. "Okay." I stepped back. Then another step. Someone shifted into the space where I'd been standing, like water filling in around a stone. The camera clicked. I turned and walked out of that banquet room before anyone could say my name. I walked past an older couple waiting to be seated. The woman glanced at me, then looked away fast. My heels clicked too loud on the tile floor. I could feel my hands shaking as I pushed through the glass doors into the parking lot. The air outside was cool. Early fall. I stood there breathing it in, trying to slow my heart down. I pressed my key fob, heard my car unlock somewhere to my left. I sat behind the wheel and just stayed there, purse still on my lap. My phone buzzed once. I didn't look. Here's the part one don't like admitting. I actually thought about going back inside. I told myself I could laugh it off, slide back into my seat and smooth it over the way I always did. Tell myself he hadn't meant it that way. Tell myself I was being too sensitive. I pictured myself walking back in, smiling too hard, pretending nothing happened while they brought out the cake. Everyone would be relieved. David would give me that grateful look he always gave me whenever I fixed things for him. Instead, I started the car and drove home. The house was quiet when I got there. Our house. The one in the subdivision off Route 59 with the maple tree out front. I kicked off my shoes by the door and stood in the kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum. I didn't cry right away. I washed my hands. Wiped down the counter that didn't need wiping. Changed into sweatpants. Kept myself busy until there was nothing left to do. At 10:42 that night, my phone buzzed again. A text from Lisa. "He's been drinking nonstop since you left." I stared at the screen. I typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Then I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. I didn't respond. David didn't come home until after midnight. I heard the garage door. His footsteps were unsteady on the stairs. He didn't come into the bedroom. He slept on the couch. In the morning, the house smelled like coffee and something sour. I stood in the kitchen in my robe, staring at the empty chair where David usually sat. I tried to put words to what I was feeling. It wasn't just hurt. It wasn't even anger yet. It was the realization that this hadn't come out of nowhere. There had been signs. Little things I'd brushed off over the years. Invitations that included Christine because it's easier for Ashley. Christmas cards addressed to David and family. Family photos where I was always the one taking the picture. I'd told myself I was being mature, understanding, flexible. But standing in that restaurant, being asked to step out like an extra who'd wandered into the wrong scene, something in me finally stopped bending. I didn't know yet what I was going to do. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about leaving. I was just thinking about that empty space in the photo, and how easily someone else had stepped into it. I'd spent years making myself smaller so everyone else could fit comfortably. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I didn't. The next morning, one word kept circling my head. A word everyone loved to use for me. Understanding. I'd heard it so many times over the years it had lost all meaning. David's sister said it. Christine said it, smiling like it was a compliment. Even David said it, usually right after he'd asked me to swallow something that hurt. "You're so understanding," he'd say. And I'd nod, because nodding was easier than explaining why my chest felt tight. Understanding had become a leash. I just hadn't noticed when it slipped around my neck. David came upstairs around 7, moving carefully like the house might bite him. He looked rough. Bloodshot eyes, hair still damp from the shower. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I answered. He opened the fridge, stared into it, then shut it again. Last night got a little out of hand." I waited. This was another thing I'd learned to do over the years. Wait. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," he said finally. "You know that, right?" I took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. "What did you mean, David?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It was just a family photo. Christine was there for Ashley. It wasn't a big deal. There it was. The minimization. The casual eraser." I felt the familiar urge rise up. The one that told me to smooth this over, reassure him, make it easier for both of us to move on. Then I closed it down. "I need to get ready for work," I said instead. He looked startled. Like I'd missed a line in a script we both knew by heart. I left the kitchen before he could say anything else. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I'm an office manager for a small construction company in Lyle. Nothing glamorous. Phones, invoices, schedules. By mid-morning, Grace from accounting leaned over my cubicle wall. "You okay?" she asked. Grace was 62, sharp as a tack, with short gray hair and a habit of cutting straight to the point. I trusted her. "I'm fine," I said automatically. She raised an eyebrow. "You want to try that again?" I laughed. Short and humorless. "My husband told me to step out of his birthday photo last night. Said it was just family." Grace didn't gasp or cluck her tongue. She just nodded once. "That'll do it." "That'll do what?" "Make you tired," she said. "Real tired." She went back to her desk without another word. Somehow that made me feel more seen than all the reassurance in the world would have. All day, memories kept surfacing. The Christmas cards. Every December, I picked them out, wrote each address by hand, signed them David and Angela. When thank you texts came in, they were always addressed to David. Once his aunt even wrote back, "So nice of Christine to think of us." The neighborhood barbecue last summer when someone asked how long David and Christine had been divorced. He answered while I stood right there holding a tray of burgers. No one corrected themselves. Neither did he. Ashley's middle school graduation. I stood behind the camera, zooming in so everyone else could fit. At the time, I told myself this was what being mature looked like. This was what a second marriage required. By the time I drove home that evening, the word had curdled in my mouth. Understanding. David wasn't home yet. I reheated leftovers and ate standing up at the counter. After dinner, I opened the hall closet to grab the vacuum and nearly tripped over a stack of papers that had slid onto the floor. I crouched down to pick them up, irritated. David had a habit of shoving things wherever they fit. Old mail, insurance statements, manuals for appliances we didn't even own anymore. As I stacked the papers, I noticed a manila folder. Handwriting on the tab, mortgage deed insurance. I froze. I don't know what made me sit down right there on the hallway floor and open it. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe instinct. Inside were copies of our mortgage statements. The home insurance policy. The deed to the house. Our house. Both names were there. His and mine. Clear as day. I kept flipping. Bank statements from our joint account. Emails printed out from years ago. One caught my eye. Hey babe, can you sign this real quick? It's just for the refinance. You're better with paperwork anyway. I remembered that night. He'd handed me the papers at the kitchen table. I was already half asleep. I'd trusted him. I sat back against the wall, folder in my lap. For years, I'd let everyone believe I was on the sidelines. That I was extra. Optional. On paper, though, I was anything but. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lisa. I hope you know David loves you. He's just bad with emotions. I stared at the message. Set the phone down without answering. Later that night, lying in bed alone, I let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding all day. What if I stopped being understanding? What if I stopped translating his behavior into something easier for other people to swallow? The idea scared me. Being the agreeable one had been my role for so long, I wasn't sure who I'd be without it. But as I drifted off to sleep, one thing was clear. I wasn't invisible on paper. And maybe that mattered more than anyone realized. I didn't go looking for leverage. I stumbled into it the way you stumble into truth by cleaning up someone else's mess. Saturday morning, David was out golfing, pretending nothing was wrong. I stayed home and did what I always did when my nerves were shot. I organized. I pulled everything out of the hall closet and spread it across the living room floor. That's when I found the credit card statements. They weren't hidden, just shoved into an old shoebox. I sat cross-legged on the rug and flipped through them. My stomach tightened with each page. Charges I recognized. Home Depot, Costco, the gas station. And others I didn't. A new set of golf clubs. A weekend hotel in Milwaukee. Bar tabs that made my eyebrows rise. I opened my laptop and logged into our bank account. Then our credit monitoring app, the one I'd set up years ago. My name. My email. My password. The numbers stared back at me. My credit score was excellent. His was not. I leaned back against the couch and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was clarity. For years, I'd been the one making sure bills were paid on time. The one who caught errors. The one who kept our finances steady while David played the role of provider. People assumed he handled everything. He didn't correct them. I had. My phone rang. Grace. You busy? She asked. Sort of, I said. But no. I told her what I'd found. Not in detail. Just enough. She was quiet for a moment. You know what that means, right? That I'm better at spreadsheets than I thought. That you've been carrying him, she said. Financially and otherwise. I laughed softly. That's not how it feels. It never does when you're the one holding the weight. That afternoon, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Her office was in Downers Grove. The waiting room smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. Elizabeth Brennan, Beth, was in her early 60s with silver hair pulled into a low bun. She offered me tea and didn't rush me once. I told her everything. The photo. The years of understanding. The folder on the floor. She listened, nodding occasionally, her pen moving across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set the pen down. You're not here because you want to punish him, she said. No, I said quickly. I can't keep doing this. She studied me for a moment. You've been protecting his image. Socially, financially, emotionally. I swallowed. I thought that's what being married meant. It does, she said gently. When it goes both ways. She explained my options. Separation. Counseling. Boundaries. None of it sounded dramatic. It sounded practical. Then she asked, "Do you know who he lists as his emergency contact at work?" The question landed harder than I expected. "I assume it's me," I said. "Assume," she repeated. That night, I checked. David's work email was still logged in on the home computer. Emergency contact, Christine. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark. I wasn't family in photos. I wasn't first in line when it mattered. Something in me hardened. Not into anger. Into resolve. The next week, I stopped doing things. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just quietly. I didn't remind him about his blood pressure medication refill. When he realized it at the pharmacy, he called me, irritated. "Can you just call it in?" he asked. "I can't today," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steady. He huffed. "Fine." At the church fundraiser planning meeting, I didn't bring the sign-up sheets or the dessert. When someone asked where they were, David looked at me. "I thought you had them," he said. "I didn't," I replied. The silence that followed was thick. Someone cleared their throat. The meeting moved on. At home, he grew restless. Snappier. He lost track of things. Missed a deadline at work. "You've been distant," he said one night. "I've been busy," I answered. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Ashley. "Are you mad at my dad?" I stared at the screen, chest tightening. "No," I typed back. "I'm just figuring some things out." She replied a minute later. I didn't like the picture thing. I closed my eyes. In that moment, I understood something important. I wasn't the only one who'd seen it. I was just the only one who'd been asked to step out. Once you stop holding everything together, things don't fall apart all at once. They wobble first. That's what surprised me most. I'd expected fireworks. Accusations. Some dramatic showdown. Instead, what I got were small failures spaced just far enough apart that no one could blame bad luck anymore. David started misplacing things. His phone. His keys. Papers he swore he'd left on the counter. "I haven't seen them," I'd say. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes it wasn't. Either way, I didn't go looking. Wednesday afternoon, he called from Walgreens. "They don't have my blood pressure refill," he said. "Did you call it in?" "No," I said. "I didn't." There was a pause. "Why not?" "I forgot." He exhaled hard. "I guess I'll deal with it." This was harder than I'd expected. Not because it was wrong, but because it went against every habit I'd built. For years, I'd been the quiet safety net. The backup plan. The one who noticed before things went wrong. Now I was letting them go wrong. Friday night, we went to a neighborhood barbecue at the Sanders house. Normally, I'd have brought a salad or dessert. Arrived early, helped set up. This time, I showed up empty-handed. 10 minutes late. David noticed immediately. "You didn't make the pasta salad?" he asked too loudly. "I didn't," I said. He frowned, confused. "I thought you were going to." "I didn't say that." One of the neighbors glanced over, then looked away. At home that night, David paced the living room while I read in bed. "Something's going on with you," he said finally. "You're acting like I did something terrible." I set my book down. "You did." He scoffed. "That photo again, Angela? You're blowing that way out of proportion." I felt the old anger rise up. I let it pass. "It wasn't just the photo," I said. "It was everything around it." He shook his head. "You're being dramatic." That word landed differently now. "Good night, David," I said, turning off the lamp. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Lisa. I'm worried about him. He's not himself. I stared at the text. Then I typed back something I'd never said before. Neither am I. The real test came a week later when David told me about the retirement recognition dinner. They're doing it at the VFW hall, he said. Saturday night. A bunch of people from church and work. I need you there. The way he said need made something twist in my chest. I'll think about it, I said. He looked startled. Think about it? Yes. He stared at me, then laughed. A short, uneasy sound. You're coming. I met his eyes. We'll see. That night, Ashley texted again. Dad's been really stressed. Are you guys okay? I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. I typed back carefully. We're working through some things. None of this is your fault. She replied with a heart emoji. Then after a minute, you didn't deserve that. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. By Friday afternoon, David was on edge. He snapped at the dog, forgot a meeting, accused me of hiding things from him. I'm not hiding, I said. I'm just not fixing. That night, I lay awake, my resolve wavering. What if this was cruel? What if I was wrong? Then I pictured myself stepping out of that photo. I went to the dinner. Not for him. For me. The VFW hall smelled like old coffee and floor cleaner. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows. Name tags stuck to jackets and blouses. It was Saturday night, 6:30. David's big moment. I didn't dress up. No bright colors. No statement jewelry. Just a navy blouse, black slacks, low heels. I wanted to look like myself, not an accessory. The drive over was quiet. David kept adjusting the radio, never settling on a station. His knee bounced. Inside the hall, people spotted David immediately. Hey, there he is. Happy retirement. Hands clapped his back. He smiled, shook hands, slipped easily into the role he knew best. Christine was there, standing near the refreshment table in a cream cardigan. She looked comfortable, at ease. Ashley stood beside her, scrolling on her phone. When she saw me, her face softened. She gave a small wave. David didn't see them at first. When he did, his shoulders loosened. Good, he murmured. They made it. They. Not you. We took our seats. The program started. Speeches about dedication. Years of service. Being a family man. Each phrase landed like a pebble dropped into still water. Then it was time for photos. Someone from the church committee stood up and raised her phone. Let's get a family picture with David. David turned automatically and reached for my hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and familiar. For a split second, the old instinct flared. Step in. Smile. Make it easy. Instead, I gently pulled my hand back. Oh, I said, my voice calm, polite, loud enough to carry. I shouldn't be in this one. David blinked. What? I smiled. The kind of smile you use when you're trying not to make a scene. You told me last week I'm not family for pictures. Remember? I'll just go grab more ice. The room went still. Not dramatically. Just wrong. A few people laughed uncertainly. Then the laughter died when no one else joined in. Christine looked down at her shoes. Ashley's head snapped up. Dad, she said. David's face flushed. He forced a chuckle. She's joking. I didn't move. Bob Crawford, a family friend David had known since high school, frowned. Was she joking, David? That did it. David's smile faltered. He opened his mouth, closed it. The phone lowered slowly. No one took the picture. I turned and walked toward the refreshment table, my heart pounding. My hands shook as I scooped ice into a plastic cup. I focused on the sound, the clatter, anything to keep myself upright. Behind me, voices murmured, questions whispered. A truth finally loose in the room. Later, in the car, David exploded. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "You embarrassed me." I stared out the window. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't." He was still ranting when we pulled into the driveway. I went inside and locked the bathroom door. My legs finally gave way. I slid down to the floor and cried. Not from regret, from release. For the first time in a long time, the truth had stood in the open. The house felt different after that night. Quieter, but also clearer. For a few days, David and I moved around each other carefully. He slept on the couch again. I didn't ask him to come back to bed. He tried anger first, then self-pity, then silence. On Tuesday evening, he stood in the kitchen while I rinsed dishes. "You didn't have to do that," he said finally. I turned off the faucet and faced him. "I didn't have to step out of that photo either." He rubbed his face, suddenly older than I'd ever seen him. "You made me look like a fool." I shook my head. "You looked like yourself." That was the moment something shifted. Over the next few weeks, the consequences settled in. Not all of them dramatic, but all of them real. Some people from church stopped calling. Others reached out quietly. Grace brought me coffee one morning and said, "About time," with a small smile. Lisa called once, awkward and subdued. Said she hadn't realized how things looked from the outside. I didn't realize how they looked from the inside, I told her. Ashley came over one Saturday afternoon while David was out. We sat at the kitchen table. "I'm glad you said something," she said, picking at the edge of a napkin. I always felt like I was supposed to pretend nothing was weird. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You never have to pretend with me." That mattered more than I expected. As for David, the reckoning was slower. He asked, awkwardly, about counseling. We went to 2 sessions. We talked about boundaries, about respect, about what family actually meant. I also opened a separate checking account in my own name. Updated beneficiaries. Took my name off a few things and put it firmly on others. Nothing dramatic, just clear. One evening, weeks later, David asked if we could talk. "I don't want to lose you," he said. I believed him. But belief wasn't enough anymore. "I don't want to lose myself," I replied. Whether our marriage would survive was still an open question. What wasn't open anymore was my place in it. One morning, I stood alone in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window, coffee warming my hands. I took a picture. Not for anyone else. Just for me. My face a little tired. A little older. But steady. I printed it out and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet. In the picture of my life, I wasn't stepping out anymore. If you've ever been asked, directly or quietly, to make yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger, I hope you remember this. Dignity doesn't come from being included by permission. It comes from standing where you belong. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice when you've been silent too long. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to disappear.